Handheld gaming has come a long way since the first Game Boy in 1989. Systems have gotten much more capable of delivering the same console experience on the go, which makes going back to the original consoles of yesteryear kind of boring. There are retro-inspired handheld solutions like RetroPie enclosures that play ROMs, and the upcoming Analog Pocket that promises to be the pinnacle of retro handheld gaming with its FPGA board and gorgeous 3.5-inch LCD screen with a resolution 10 times greater than the original Game Boy. But what if you want to modify your existing retro handheld and give it the same modern quality as current handhelds? Modifying handhelds isn't really anything new. Screen modifications have existed for retro consoles before the big retro collecting boom, but there have always been severe hazards associated with these modifications. The system wouldn't always keep up with the screen quality, heavy modification was required, or the install would be so complicated that you could easily destroy a working system in the process. Also, one of the reasons why I avoided modding in the first place was that in the past, mods weren't very easy to revert back to if you wanted to go back to the original stock. In some cases, the entire system needed to be dremeled to make room for the modification, and this wasn't really an issue when consoles were inexpensive, but now destroying a perfectly working system is seen as a faux pas. I like keeping my systems as close to stock as possible, and also I wasn't very confident in my soldering skills to tackle such modifications. But now it's gotten crazy easy to modify handhelds that only a minimal amount of soldering is required. And the quality of the screen modifications has increased so much that it's worth plopping in a new screen. In this video, I'm going to go over the 3 handhelds that I have modified so far and discuss plans for future modifications. Now before you light me up in the comments, yes, I am aware of the other Nintendo consoles that were made that provide a better screen experience right out of the box, specifically the Game Boy Advance SP AGS 101. But I don't like the Game Boy Advance SP form factor, and I have 2 which have broken after I dropped them. For whatever reason, Nintendo decided to skip the Nintendonium on these consoles. I even have a Game Boy player for the GameCube, but one thing that annoys me the most about Game Boy Advance for regular Game Boy games is that the cartridge juts out so far from the slot, making it look very clunky. On top of the comfortable form factor for the Game Boy Color, I love how the cartridges sit flush with the system. The screen is from Midwest Embedded, who is a newcomer to the screen mod community, and unlike earlier screen mods, the new LCD screens come with a circuit board that allow the systems to output a higher resolution and still retain the performance that would exist without that screen. Installing this mod was pretty simple. You do need to cut a little bit of the case, but if you're using an opaque color like I did, you won't even notice it. The screen does require a couple of solder points, but less if you don't really care about the brightness adjustments. And as you can see, the difference is night and day. The screen is super bright, and as far as I've been able to discern, no significant impact on battery life. Now, I'm not going to go too technical because I really can't speak on authority about the specs, but for a layman, this mod is pretty awesome. It is a TFT display, which means that the viewing angle and color reproduction isn't going to be as accurate as an IPS display, but it is leaps and bounds better than the original display, and that's all that really matters for me. The drawback to this mod is that I can only play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. If I want to play Game Boy Advance games, I do have the option to play my DS Lite or a Game Boy Micro, so it's not that big of a deal. I do plan on salvaging one of those Game Boy Advance SP screens and dropping it into a regular Game Boy Advance, since I love that form factor the most. The case for modding an Atari Lynx is a bit stronger than the Game Boy Color. There really aren't any modern ways to play all the Atari Lynx games. The Analog Pocket promises to play Atari Lynx games, but if you really want to play the 72 Atari Lynx games the way that they were meant to be played, you're going to need an official Atari Lynx, and the 30-year-old handheld hasn't aged very well at all. The screen is in color, but it's backlit, which was huge in 1989 compared to the Game Boy, which didn't see a backlight in the US until 2004. But a color backlit screen from that era is nowhere near the quality that we have today. Basically, the screen is lit up by a light bulb, which isn't very bright, and while you can still make out what's going on, the colors are very washed out. Enter the BenVen drop-in LCD. This does require a bit more soldering than the Game Boy Color, but if you take your time, it's just as easy. There were 2 screens available, either made in China or Japan, and I took the Japanese version because the screen was made by Sharp. I also got a 3D printed bracket to hold the screen in place. And this screen really makes a huge difference. The amount of detail that you can see in each sprite is truly amazing. It's actually inspired me to look for some more Atari Lynx games. I also placed a pre-order for the Atari Lynx flash cart so I can play the crazy amount of homebrew games that's available for this system. The Game Boy is my first handheld, and I had debated on modding it mainly because there weren't too many safe mods available for the system. You could do the Bivert mod, which is pretty cheap, however you do need to make some substantial modifications to the screen, and it can result in damaging your Game Boy entirely. It also doesn't do anything to reduce the screen ghosting. And that's why the DMG IPS screen is so important in the Game Boy modding scene. It's pretty much a full replacement, and you'll need to solder the speaker to the new board, but this is a very modern screen that even changes colors to recreate the Bivert mods. You can also get a TFT screen, which isn't as color accurate, for $20 less. You can buy them from various places, but I went with Console 5 since it comes with a 3D printed bracket. But the mod doesn't make too much sense when you consider the Game Boy Color is backwards compatible, but I am a fan of the chunky form factor of the DMG. So with 3 mods under my belt, I'm really confident and I want to try some more. I have the Virtual Tap, which will allow my spare Virtual Boy to output via VGA, so it'll allow you to play on the TV instead of being hunched down over a desk with your face up so close to the LCD that it ruins your eyes. I'm also planning on modding the Game Gear. Mine needs to be recapped, and since I'm opening it up, I might as well seek a new screen since the base screen is just the same as the Atari Lynx. Washed out and screen ghosting. As far as consoles go, I've debated on it for a while, and just like with my handhelds, I want to keep it as close to stock as possible. Anything that requires me to drill into the console has been out of the question for a very long time. But I have considered adding RCA to my Atari 2600 and Intellivision, and I've actually purchased the GameCube GC loader that essentially replaces the GameCube disk drive and allows you to play backups from an SD card. I have an extra GameCube that's also kind of gruffed up, so I don't mind sacrificing that, and I still have my original GameCube that I bought when it was originally released, so I have a factory original. So that wraps up this video. Let me know what consoles you have modded, and if you have any suggestions, leave me some comments down below. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment. It really helps the video find a new audience. If you're new here, I have plenty of other content, including talking about video game price trends, like Cooking Mama Cookstar. I also have other game collecting topics, like are Trinitrons necessary? So if you like what you see, consider subscribing for future content. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Super Nicktendo, and I'll see you next time.